Sadly, it's ridiculously easy to get into sales because most companies that want entry-level sales don't understand what it really means. To a lot of people, it's just go bring revenue in, we'll give you money. So people jump into it thinking, oh, this is going to be easy. This is a great product or service. Now you have this flood of people coming into the sales realm, and a lot of them are getting discouraged. A lot of them are getting lost in the shuffle, and they're not being successful because they don't understand the basis of why you do sales to begin with.
Welcome to the Career Curious podcast. I'm your host, George Roots. I am here with Jim Patterson. I've known Jim for at least 20 years.
Somewhere in that range, yeah.
Both professionally and personally. But we haven't talked in maybe a couple of years, especially professionally. So I'm curious, what are you doing these days and who are you doing it for?
I am a strategic sales partner for a company called Braden Business Systems. I work on the IT side of things. Braden's been around 35 years, started out in the copier and print sector. We are now one of the largest independently owned copier retailers in Indiana and the Midwest. On the MSP side of managed services, I basically work with small, medium-sized companies to build out their IT infrastructure and then manage all that. So the easy way to put it, we are their IT team for companies that can't afford to have a full IT internal team. So you have your network guy, your security guy, all these different people. We do all of that for a short rate. But then we also help you plan for the future as far as looking at what those business outcomes are and how can technology help you get there. IT sales guy, that's the short version.
Let me ask a couple questions about Brayden. You say that you help companies with their IT needs. Is that like staff augmentation, completely contract? What does that mean?
No, we are strictly managed services. You see a lot of companies out there that do a little bit of everything and they do it fairly well. We decided about 4 years ago, we've been doing this over a decade, but we decided to focus really big. Instead of being good at everything, we wanted to be great at one thing because there's so much out there. Plenty of companies do that. Let them roll and do it. With us, it's all about managed services. When you look at that profile, the size company we go for, what we're basically coming in and saying is, yes, we could be your time and materials, just we break and fix stuff. At the same point, we want to be strategic. So if you had an internal IT team and they were at the table for your board meetings, for your corporate planning, what are they going to suggest? What do they want to do? How do they actually care about your business because it's their business too? And we are that for all of our clients. So it is a very strategic type of play, which not a lot of companies in our space do. They're typically just, we'll fit you in this box, we'll maintain everything you have running so it doesn't break down, and then you give us a check every month. Ours is more like, how do we help you grow and get to a point where you don't need us anymore? At some point, you're going to grow to a size where you need a full IT team and need everything to run. That's what we're helping you, is getting you through that journey, because these days, like it or not, every company is a tech company, because you need technology to do what you have to do. And if you're running, say, a plumbing supply company or a florist shop, you don't really necessarily know about technology, but that can help you open up multiple locations. That can help you get more fleet out on the road. It can help you get to that next level. We help you do that in a cost-effective way that doesn't impede your growth progress.
Absolutely. Let me ask one more follow-up question. Because you are in sales, would you help with a help desk solution as well? Are you helping with hardware? Are you helping? Because you mentioned something that sounds like logistics, like if you have trucks that need to be on the road. So are you helping with the software side, hardware side? I guess where's the sweet spot?
If we're managing all that, we take care of those type of projects as well. We do a lot of third-party management. When you've got 20 different companies that do different stuff on that IT scale, it could be for fleet management, tracking, GPS for the trucks, fuel efficiency, routing software, all of those type of things. If something goes wrong, you've got to call each one of those and find out what the problem is. Or you call our help desk, we take care of it, and then show you on a dashboard where it is in the process, when it's going to be resolved, and eventually what the resolution is. And that's just part of the service. So when you have an issue of any kind, all you got to do is call one number or email one email, and we take care of the rest of it. So
Gotcha, makes a lot of sense.
All of those things come into play, whether we do those things or not. So, I mean, like fleet management software, not our thing. There are partners that do it. We can interact with them and make sure not only that it works the way it should, but that it actually integrates with your current network properly, and you're not just buying a solution and then you install it and it screws everything up because you didn't think about that, because you don't do IT. That's what we help along the path and help you with those type of things because there's so many different caveats every solution that you don't think about until it's too late. And when it's too late, it costs you more money. So how do we minimize those surprises? We work through all those integrations on your behalf and make those things happen.
Gotcha. I guess let's ask more questions. I feel like you're selling me, just so you know. I'm like, is this a sales call?
Hey, I do this every day. It's one of those things where you have to explain what it is. So I just go, hey, look, this is how we work it. This is how the solution fits. If it makes sense, we roll. If it doesn't, great. We can find you a company that just does break fix, that you just yell at when stuff goes down. There's plenty of those companies out there. We're not one of them.
So how long have you been in sales, and how'd you get started?
I have been in sales since high school. My first sales job was a men's clothing store in the mall in Evansville, Indiana. Midway through college, I got a sales job with a local IT company building PCs when local companies did that and actually sold them. One of the first deals I got was with Indiana University, which is where I was going. We did a huge purchase with them, then started doing some government work, and it just kind of grew from there. Moved here to Indianapolis and basically continued that journey down the technical sales path. I started off going to college as a developer, realized I didn't want to sit in front of a computer every day, so I went the sales route, and now I sit in front of my computer every day.
What attracted you to sales then?
Interacting with people and fixing problems. I typically was that person, even with my friend group. Somebody has a problem, I was the one they would call to talk it out, work through it, have somebody to bounce an idea off of. As much as it's cool to be a shoulder to cry on, I also want to come up with a solution. And I love finding out new solutions to things that I'm not familiar with. So, I mean, my wife, my kids can all tell you if they have a question, they're going to ask me. They know I'm going to go down that Google rabbit hole, not only find your answer, but the history of the answer and where it applies because I need to know all of it. So that's really where
Agree.
my sales brain came into because it's not just about selling that widget. It's about what is the problem I'm trying to help you solve. If I can't do it, who can, and I'll put you in front of those people. I just love to solve problems, and inadvertently, I sell some stuff at the same time. It's great when those people then call you later and go, okay, you didn't help me the last time, but you got me in front of the right person. And now I'm that sounding board for them as well. It's basically been the pattern throughout my career.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. A lot of people who know me know I like to sell myself. And as an engineer, we think of engineers as more reclusive, but I see it sales as solving problems, right? Like I think sales sometimes gets a bad rap when someone tries to sell you something that you don't want. But if the salesperson is actually helping you solve a problem and they're saying the problem you have aligns with the solution we're creating, even if I don't have the answer for you now, we are bonded in the problem statement, meaning that we will eventually be solving that same problem because we are aligned at what the problem is. And if that's the case, then it becomes how long before we get to the solution that you want, right? Or do we already have it? In case, and we're just aligned on the problem statement. So I love sales. And I think people should probably have more sales skills because we're always selling something, right? Whether or not it's
Yeah,
inside sales, outside sales, inside the company, outside the company, right? So yeah, I agree.
everybody technically is a salesperson, as well. If you're a business owner, you're selling every single day because it's your business. If you're dating, you're selling yourself
Absolutely.
to find that person you're compatible with because there's a problem you're trying to solve, which is companionship. So you have to put yourself out there to get the best possible mate. Everything you do really comes down to even raising children, convincing them to go to bed at the right time.
Yes.
That's a sales call. You're convincing them it's a good idea because the alternative is, lock them in their room and shut the lights off or cut the power. Not that I've done that, but there's an extreme to
Yeah.
that. Or you could sell the idea of here's why you need to go to bed. This is the problem you're going to solve later. If you don't go to bed, you're going to be cranky. So let's go to bed early and solve that problem.
You mentioned being a technical salesperson. I want to get into that. But first, before we get into technical sales, or just sales generally, if you knew, let's say, an 18-year-old or a 22-year-old right out of college, or even a 25 or 30-year-old who was looking to make a career change, how difficult would it be to get into sales?
Sadly, it's ridiculously easy to get into sales because most companies that want entry level sales don't understand what it really means. To a lot of people, it's just go bring revenue in, we'll give you money. So people jump into it thinking, oh, this is going to be easy. This is a great product or service. Now you have this flood of people coming into the sales realm, and a lot of them are getting discouraged. A lot of them are getting lost in the shuffle, and they're not being successful because they don't understand the basis of why you do sales to begin with. Yes, you have to sell your product or service because that's how revenue happens, but people don't want to be sold to, like you said before. People love to buy things, they just don't want to be sold to. That's why we have things like Carvana and all these things where you can go look at a car online. I can get all the details I want. So when I walk into a lot, I already have a good idea of what I want because it came down to we hate car salesmen selling us stuff. So there's a whole industry to avoid that situation. You can go across the board to all those type of things. That's why you go into a clothing store. They ask, "Can I help you?" And you're like, "Nope, just looking." You went into that store for a reason. You just don't want to be sold to.
Absolutely.
How do we solve the problem? Asking more of those open-ended questions, trying to figure out what that solution is. I don't walk into a clothing store unless I'm going to get something. If I walk in there, I would rather be asked, "What brings you in?" Or "What can I help you find?" At that point, I'm like, "Yeah, I'm looking for jeans." "Great, take me to the jeans. Let's go figure out what that problem is. What do you need jeans for? Let's have a conversation to find the right jean or whatever it is, because there's many different types of everything that's out there." Once you learn that value of helping someone compared to selling someone, sales can be fantastic.
What advice would you give to someone who wants to transition, who believes that they might have a sales skill, but they don't want to become the person that sells negatively?
Find somebody that loves what they do and shadow them. That's probably the easiest way to do it. I mean, there's a lot of people who are like, "Yeah, sure. We'll just tell them that you're a trainee and just watch what I do for a couple of deals. If you like this, then here's all the books. Here's all the resources." I would suggest different books or training courses or whatever. But really what it comes down to is see somebody do it, get in their environment. And if you could see yourself doing that, give it a shot. See what comes out of it. But no amount of books, no amount of courses in college, because now some colleges do actually do sales as a course. But none of those things are going to help you if when you actually get out there, everybody's a salesperson. It doesn't mean everybody's good at it. It helps to know some technique of how to have those conversations. And if you can turn that into a career, great. But you've got to want to talk to people. Better yet, you've got to want to listen to people. And then you got to want to solve problems. I mean, I've been doing technology sales for 30 years at this point. My job as a salesperson is to get you down that path to find out what the real problem is and how do we solve it. Once we figure that out, we can get into the minutia. I hate to do the car analogy again, but
Yeah.
I can sell a car. I don't have to be a mechanic to sell a car.
If someone were to start from zero, they put in, let's say, 3 years of sales, they feel like they have a good baseline. I think I'm going to oversimplify it because I know you have inside sales, outside sales, you have SDRs, and all the different jargon that I'm not going to define now. Maybe I'll put something inside the comments for people who want to investigate. How much more learning does it take to become a technical salesperson or even a more specific salesperson than general?
It helps to know what your market is, what your product is. I know just enough about how networks work to be dangerous. People who aren't technical that I'm talking to, what are they concerned about in the technical space and how to talk to that. If I'm talking to a company that's only 100 employees and they don't have a technical person, I'm talking to the CEO, CFO, controller, one of those people, they're not really worried about the speed, feeds, how this connects to the internet or any of that type of stuff. What they want to know is, here's the work I'm trying to get done. How can I get that done better? Or we just had a cybersecurity breach. How can you help us be more protected? To answer those type of questions, I don't need to go in the technology piece of it. I run things like, okay, what are the concerns you're having with cybersecurity? What did that process look like? When you got hacked, what happened? Did everything just shut down? Could you not do any business? What did that cost you? How painful was that? If you had cybersecurity insurance, did they pay out? Or did they not pay you because you didn't check all the boxes you needed to do when you got cybersecurity insurance? None of those are technical questions, but those are concerns that an executive would have. They didn't pay because we weren't training our employees regularly on phishing attacks. We didn't have a protocol in place for if the internet goes out. And they're like, we didn't even know. Well, great. Let's go down that rabbit hole because that's a much bigger situation. And that's really where the problem is. What brand laptop do you have? Nobody cares. You were hacked. Whether they hacked a Dell or an HP or an Acer, nobody cares. But what it comes down to is our company was down and it cost us $50,000 every hour it was down. We don't want that to happen again. Can you help us? Yes. Here's how we go about that from a high level standpoint to where they're like, okay, so for a little bit of money, I don't lose $50,000 an hour. Yes. Then we go talk to other people and go through the technical aspects, but that's when I bring in a sales engineer or one of our virtual CIOs, and they have that conversation to get all those things implemented. But I'm just solving the underlying problem, which is when we're down, we lose $50,000 an hour. How do we not do
Makes
that?
sense.
That's not a technology question anymore, but I'm solving a problem. So one of the things from a technology sales standpoint is how do you step around the nuts and bolts and get to the core problem? And that's where the fun
Absolutely.
comes into play. I mean, can I talk nuts and bolts? Yes, but I won't sound like an expert because I'm not. I'm a problem solver. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a technician. So
I have
knowing
a
when, yeah, knowing when to bring them in and when not to is part of that process as well.
I have a couple more questions, and then we can. I actually have two more serious questions, and then one more softball question. You just reminded me of something I used to like to say. You can't put a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound. Sometimes I feel like people aren't solving the right problems.
That's an edit moment.
All right, so let me see. What is a typical week look? What does a typical week look like for you? More specifically, what does a Monday look like for you?
So a typical week is probably about 30% in front of prospective clients, talking to them about our service and getting them down that sales path to either yes or no. Another third of it is probably networking. In sales these days, you want to network, and that's everything from in-person networking events. That is networking groups where you're talking with other people in other industries. The more people out there that know you exist, the easier it is to get your word out. That other third is a lot of strategic planning. It's emails, answering calls, all that. But it's not as much as you would think because a lot of what we do, luckily, we've automated. So thank God for AI as far as what it's capable of at this point. So we've gone from a few hours to put together a proposal to about 5 minutes because we have all the templates, we have the content. It's just a matter of saying, hey, throw this into this, into this PowerPoint and put this all together, and then take all the names, throw it into the contract. So if they say yes, I can send it over immediately. That used to take forever. Now it's almost instant, and it's amazing. I can spend more time face to face with people, and face to face meaning like this or legitimately in person and having those conversations. Because from a sales standpoint, if I'm not in front of somebody, I'm not selling. How much time can I get in front of those people to do that? When I'm in front of somebody, I want to make sure it is valuable time for them as well as for me. That downtime for me when I'm not doing social media marketing, networking, and all of that, it's doing all the background work. It's amazing the amount of information you can get. It's almost downright scary. If I know I'm going to meet Bob Smith at ABC Company, I can look up Bob Smith on LinkedIn, Facebook, all of those things, get a full view on what that person is, what they do, how long they've been at the company, get all the information about the company, put all that together and throw that into a synopsis. Here is this company. They do this work. They've been around this long. Here's other companies we've worked with and the solutions we provided them. I can put all that together into a dossier. So when I walk in that first handshake of, hey, how you doing? I'm ready to answer just about any question they could possibly throw at me. Have we worked in this industry before? Here's the companies we've worked with. What would we do in this type of situation? Well, here's what we did for them. If they tell me a problem, great, I get that problem, but let's go down the pain funnel, we like to call it. What does that problem really do? Well, how does it affect you? What happens to the business if that doesn't get addressed? Because whatever they tell you that surface problem is never going to be the true problem. A lot of my time throughout that week is strategizing those calls. Executives want you to be 80% in front of people. Well, that 30%, if it's quality, you're going to get much more reaction from them than if you're just 80% in front of people and most of it turns to crap because you aren't prepared.
What's next for you career-wise? What is the natural evolution of this position?
As we grow, we've also got a team of people with us that we manage and help through the process. We're also mentoring newer salespeople. I meet with a few different groups in other industries with newer sales reps to help mentor them through this process. One of my kids does sales in a different way. The other three do not. But helping them through that process for that next generation of salespeople, helping with that knowledge so they don't have to relearn what I took so long to learn the first time. I love that part quite a bit. The mentoring side of things is absolutely great. Growing what we're doing here has been fantastic. And then also consulting. with companies that don't need what we need now. I'm kind of that sounding board in a lot of situations for other companies and executive friends of mine to help them through their journey as well. It's just a continuation of how I help people when I'm not getting paid for it, because it's what I love to do. That helps me in my career as it starts to grow and as I start to wind down toward retirement. Sadly, many years from now, I'd love to do it tomorrow. I'm tired. But as I get closer to that journey, all that knowledge, I would love to go somewhere to continue to help people even after I'm done doing it on a daily basis. So I'm laying all that groundwork to help get that done.
All right. So last question, more of a softball question. If everything was blank, nothing to do with your career, nothing to do with sales, what careers would you be curious about?
So outside of sales,
outside of everything. We're in a void right now.
There's many things out there that I love and would love to know more about. One of them, honestly, a lot of my background comes from the technology sector, so I hear and read more about that than anything. I'm always interested in the next phase of what happens. Right now, one of my biggest areas that I'm loving going down the rabbit hole of is virtual and augmented reality in education. And that's been fascinating to me, just from a standpoint of there are many teachers that helped me get to where I am. If you look back on most people's careers or their life, when they look at, who I would think if I was at the end of my life for, the life that I currently have, chances are after you get past, parents or siblings or whatever, there's probably a teacher in there somewhere. And looking at what some of the newer technology can do to make a teacher's job more meaningful to their kids, it's amazing. There was one I just read about here recently. They were doing a thing about Neil Armstrong. But I read about Neil Armstrong in a book. I was born a year after he landed on the moon. So, I was too young to know about it at the moment. But reading about it later, I was like, okay, great. We landed on the moon. So what do we do after that? Kids now think somebody landed on the moon back in the 1700s. It was so far before their time, they just don't care. But now being able to put a headset on and see a virtual Neil Armstrong standing on the moon, having a conversation with you about what that experience was like, what it was like to do the takeoff, the experience he had when he got back home and how that affected him and what did they learn. And you're talking with a virtual Neil Armstrong. It's fascinating. It now gets you learning in a way that was never even thought of before because it wasn't possible. And then the cool part about that being that now you have a teacher with 20 to 30 kids in a room. Every single one of them learns differently. Some learn through oral learning. You tell them, they learn it. Great. Other ones want to read and to learn. Some of them just skim the information and take a test. A lot of kids are terrible at test taking. How do you combine all of that and try to create a standard that one teacher has to do? Technology is now at a point where every single kid can learn differently, but the end result's still the same. If the state says every kid's got to learn about Neil Armstrong, great. I can now figure out how each kid would learn about that, set that scenario up, and off they go on their own. So now they learn at their own pace, in their own way, and they're comfortable, and every kid comes out knowledgeable. That is a fascinating thing. So I've been kind of going down that rabbit hole. So if I had to start all over again, it would be somewhere in that education space to help with that knowledge transfer to get our kids to a point where they're capable of being.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. I love that. So JP, I've spent about 35, 40 minutes of your time asking you questions. Do you have any questions for me?
How's that whole thing going?
It is amazing to watch this little monster grow. Right? She's the most beautiful monster because she tears up everything. Once you see it from the perspective of curiosity and being patient, I love that I'm older.
That'll be fun now that you have a second one coming, is now that you've gotten your brain accustomed to this is how this other creature operates and I have to retrain my brain, you're going to do it all over again because they're going to operate in a completely different way. And right. Your mind's going to, well, this is how the first one did it, so this is how babies do it. Nope, right. That one's different too. I got 4 kids, and when they need me for something, every single one, all 4 of them operate differently.
So you made it to the end of the podcast. Thank you for your time and your stories and your history. Is there anything going on professionally or personally that you want to discuss, that you want to share to bring light to something?
It's one of those things where never stop learning. And it's one of those things I always have to tell myself all the time. I mean, in technology, we have to keep learning because technology always changes. So there's always that new shiny thing. Stuff has to change so often, and you have to stay with it until you no longer can. And then that's when you wind down and do whatever that has to be done. It's one of those things where, regardless of the career you're in, you have to continually be on your game to learn the next thing, whether it's in your industry or not, because this is the only tool that's going to matter. No matter how much technology gets, no matter how far AI is going to get with things, this now becomes more important because the closer technology gets to a human brain, the more we're going to need smarter humans to differentiate between the two.
I love that too, because we live in a culture that information comes in such a fashion that stops us from doing deep learning, that stops
Yes.
us being able to focus because we're constantly triggered to look at the next piece of information. We just read the headlines. And so I love how you are framing, in order to be useful, you will have to find out how to deep learn. And that's incredibly powerful to me. Thank you so much, JP. I appreciate all your time. We'll see you again on another podcast.